Good evening, Western Cape Teachers Forum followers and friends of the page. Welcome to this edition, once again, of COVID Talks. I trust that you've had a great week, day so far, amidst all the challenges and concerns and even the pleasantries that we've experienced in the last couple of days. As you would know, for the last couple of weeks, we've taken the conversation to various teachers from their perspectives as practitioners in their respective schools. We've even had some matric learners on the page to share their perspectives and thoughts on the new normal. And so tonight, we are taking the conversation to the principal of John Graham Primary School, Mr. Andre Engel. Before I do the introductions, Mr. Engel, good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, Lee, Mr. Hoffmann. Good evening to your viewers. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, sir. Now, thank you for gracing us with your presence and your time here this evening. Now, I know that offline we agreed that we're going to stick to first name basis, Andre and Lee, but you know, it's such a habit of mine to refer to the surname. But in any case, Andre, thank you once again for joining. Now, just very quickly, you know, I'm told earlier that you started your teaching career at Ned Doman High School, and then from there you moved to Westerford High School as a teacher. From there you went to Wynberg Boys Junior School as an educator, and I think you were an HOD at some stage there. And then you assumed the role of principal at Wesley Practicing School in Salt River. And as of recent, I think as of the 1st of April this year, you assumed the title as the principal of John Graham Primary School. Is that correct?
In a nutshell, yeah. So we're looking at about, I don't know, close 15 years maybe of education. So I started in education a little bit later than most people. I didn't do teaching just immediately after school. I was in another career, but the calling became too great, and you pretty much summed up my career path in 5 seconds, eh? Yeah. Glowing career.
No, you know, many people do not know this, but you are actually a qualified, town planner.
Yeah, town and regional planner. You know, I've got a piece of paper that says that, you know, but I was probably the worst town planner that there ever was. So I will not call myself qualified in any way. I think it was a dismal failure. And that, you know, precipitated my journey into the education sector. So I think for everything there's a reason, and that was probably, I needed to experience that. I needed to experience some failure in my life so that I can get a reality check. So
some failure in your life. All right, now, Mr. Engel, you know, let's get right into the business of the conversation this evening. Now, you know, like I said earlier, we asked for some perspectives from educators, from even psychologists and life coaches, even Prof. Jansen. And then as of recent, we had some matric learners recently on. Now, as a school principal, you were recently appointed at the school whilst we were still in lockdown or the institutional closure period, as it were. What was the takeover, the transition process like?
I think the word that comes to mind is interesting. You know, funnily enough, on Thursday this week, if everything had gone according to plan, I would have been in the office for 100 days exactly. So it was a challenge on a different level, you know, because I first needed to get over the idea that I'm so excited to start at a new school, and I think for a long time, that diluted my perspective a bit. You know, I was just so keen to get started, you know, and I wanted schools to open because I really needed to get in there, and I wanted to make an impact, and I wanted to make a difference. And like I said, it probably gave me sort of a warped sense of actually what was going on. But then the reality really got to me, and I got a better understanding when I looked beyond what was personally interesting to me and what I really wanted to achieve. When I looked beyond that, I really got to deal with. Okay, this is a little bit more difficult and a little bit more challenging than you think it is going to be. So it was very interesting, you know. I think I got to meet my staff with, using an MS Teams meeting. So that was sort of the introduction to the process, you know. My first engagement with the SGB of the school was to ask them for money. And that is unheard of, you know. Not how are you doing, but it was a question of, as a school, we needed to develop a system where we could reach our clients, our learners, our parents. And at that stage, there wasn't one that was functional enough that we could reach them quite easily. So I needed to ask them for money. Strange way to start. So I think it was interesting, to say the least, but it was also on a personal level, it was very, very exciting. I've got to admit that.
Yeah, and I mean, thank goodness for technology, you know. And did you experience any challenges as regards to the technology in terms of how you communicated with the colleagues during that time?
You see that the difficulty with my first engagement with a platform like this was, in fact, during that time. You know, I didn't know about Zoom and MS Teams and
Yeah.
these sorts of things. It was outside of my life experience. And I suggested to my SMT, let's have a virtual meeting. And they asked, what is a virtual meeting? I said, okay, let's just do something on WhatsApp, you know. But the difficulty with that sort of technology is that people interpret things differently than what you actually meant to say. So thank goodness for technology, and thank goodness for the ability to have a meeting like this. But challenges indeed, not just from my side, but I think a lot of educators did not understand how this particular thing worked, you know, and the concept of having a meeting, a virtual meeting, a face-to-face meeting with a group of people is foreign and alien to a lot of educators, whereas in many other sectors of industries of our country in the world, this is commonplace. You know, people do this all the time. So even this, you know, this presented a huge challenge just in terms of getting over that idea of, sure, I'm not there in person and I need to stop talking and I need to listen to what you're saying before I can make a comment. That in itself, teachers are not known for keeping quiet and for still to sit. So that was a challenge in itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I kept on asking this question to many other guests that I had on. So this is certainly an opportunity for us to reimagine and to just re-strategize in terms of how we engage and how do we do things. Now just to quickly chat about the reopening. Now, they were besides the, you know, the readiness of schools in terms of the PPE and getting the place cleaned and sanitized and all of that. There was this additional drama around the reopening date. There was the 1st of June, then there was the 8th of June. And so, I mean, there was a lot of confusion. Some schools took it upon themselves to deviate from the communicated date. What was the situation like at your school?
Lee, I remember that Sunday night that represented one of the most stressful situations, stressful moments in my life, you know, and for the simple reason, and that was that I needed to make a decision. You know, up until that stage, I was waiting on the WCD to say something, or the DB to say something, and the messages were very conflicting. And we found ourselves in this middle ground, and we've got a community to answer to in terms of the learners that come to our school and their parents. And the parents are seeing something on the news and the WCD communicating something else. And somewhere in the middle, I needed to get to that point where I was comfortable enough to make a decision and live with the consequences. And that wasn't an easy task to do, because whatever decision I made was going to be on me. And then that idea of owning up, of putting up your hand and stepping up to the plate came to the fore in so many ways. So I was one of the Sonderbokke who sent out a communication to the parents to say, we are not going to open schools on the 1st of June. We are going to delay the opening of schools. But the liberation in that was immense, because the moment I made that decision, I grew up, you know, as a principal, because it was, I understand the consequence and I understand the risk involved in terms of a direct instruction from the employer.
Yeah.
And really, let's be honest, I didn't follow that. But in that moment, I accepted that perhaps what is going to happen after this is not going to be the most pleasant situation. But that was good for me in terms of growth as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, it almost speaks, not almost, it speaks about decisive leadership, you know, in the absence of guidance and sort of certainty. The leader or the manager is almost, you are prompted to take a stance, to take a decision, because in the absence of that, it doesn't look good in the eyes of those who you are to lead.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want to comment on that?
Absolutely. I think, I think as a leader, you are challenged when you need to make a decision. It's very easy to say that this one says that and that one says that. And a lot of our conflict resolution strategies, especially in the workplace, is to say that the WCD wants this or the circuit manager wants that. So it becomes a shield and a barrier in terms of dealing with that conflict. So leadership and making decisions it goes hand in hand, But I think this presented such a unique opportunity for me and I want to call myself a progressive leader, in that in the absence of those guidelines, what it did do, it created a vacuum for people to be creative.
Yeah.
And I think we lost an opportunity there. I really do think we did. I think as we got stuck into this and people came to terms with it and more people returned to office and people are seeking to find normality. And I think we lost the opportunity. So in that little space there, I was able to play around and I was able to look at things like models of timetabling. And I gotta say that long before this idea of trips and whatever came along, we platooned this idea of, okay, let's try an alternative timetable here. The idea of assessment came to mind.
Yeah.
It's going to be difficult to do assessment in the way that we're doing it right now. So let's be creative. I know that the districts and the subject specialists are working on this, but up until this stage, there's been no real guideline to say this is how assessment is going to happen and how it's going to take place.
Yeah.
So it's provided that bit of freedom and room and opportunity to be creative and try new things amidst.
Did I just lose Mr. Engel there?
At a purely artistic, and I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, I lost you there for a couple of seconds. My apologies for that. Mr. Engel, Andre, I wanna. Speaking of guidelines, you mentioned that now there was a number of guidelines that were published and released by the employer in relation to the management of COVID-19 in the workplace.
Yes.
Now, you may have seen the letter. I mean, there was a letter that was written by a principal from Mr. Engel Wertheim from Allo Senior Secondary School in Lente here. And he, among other things, he alluded to the fact that the guidelines aren't working. Now, I want to read just an extract from the letter, all right? And it goes as follows. By all accounts, the MEC and the HOD are good, hard-working folk. I've also listened to them enough times to know that they are highly intelligent people. But here's the thing. They do not get it. They cannot begin to, no matter how hard they try to understand the difficulties and plethora of challenges attached to teaching in and managing wholly under-resourced schools. They cannot hope to understand because all their lives they've experienced privilege, grew up privileged, attended privileged schools, and now still live privileged, protected lives. It's not their fault. It is what it is. And then just further to that, the problem though is that these people are policymakers and they make policy for our schools whose learning reality they do not understand, whose parents' reality they do not understand, who struggle and poverty they can never hope to understand. And I close the quote there. Now that came from a principal of a high school in Mitchell's Plain. Now obviously he speaks about the whole issue of under-resourced schools versus those who are well-resourced. I mean, so how do you what are your thoughts on that?
Sure, Lee, that is I read the letter from the principal, and what I enjoyed, maybe that's not the choice word at this stage, but what I appreciate perhaps a bit to it from the letter is that I do get the sense that here's a guy who has said, this challenge is real. It is upon us, and I am going to see what I can do about it. I'm going to try and do the best that I possibly can, with the resources that I have. And it's gotten to a point where it has almost spiraled out of his control, and I read there the number of teachers that he has that are not at school because of comorbidities, and I've read about the teachers who are in isolation. And I think that sort of reality no one is prepared for, so the guidelines that he makes reference to are wonderful guidelines, and it does sort of cater for eventualities, but that reality that he's referring to, I think that is the thing, that is the particular problem that we are yet to solve. So in his particular case, it's difficult to understand how he's going to manage that. The sad thing is the idea that he feels very lonely at this time. For me, and being a principal is a lonely position in any case, but in this point in time, one can read the emotion and one can get the sense that he feels disillusioned but lonely, because who is going to help him and how are we going to help him? And that answer, I struggle to find a solution at this point in time. You read out my list of schools that I've been at, and overwhelming majority of them have been of a privileged nature. So his sort of challenges is really outside of my experience.
Yeah.
In terms of, for me to give him all sorts of advice and all sorts of hope, would be almost farcical, because what do I know about that sort of challenge and that sort of struggle?
Yeah.
But someone needs to help, and my immediate thoughts would be, you've got to make use of the district officials that they are and say to them, look, whatever it is that you're doing at this point in time, I can't be left to solve this problem, because this is beyond the scope of what I can do. I don't have the authority to hire people and say, he mentioned something, my substitute is being substituted.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have that authority to hire people, and to say that I'm going to put a biology specialist in an English department, sure, that is challenging,
Yeah.
So to someone like him, I'm not even going to insult him by trying to say to him, I think this is what you should do.
Yeah.
I can only say to him that my heart goes out to him tremendously.
Okay.
Because he needs all the support in the world at this stage.
Yeah. Now you'd appreciate the fact that he's not the only principal in that unfortunate position. He perhaps just had the courage to speak out and obviously just share his. Now, if you were in the driving seat of education in our country, how would you have approached the situation, given the experience that you have and the institutional knowledge, of course?
It's you see, Lee, this it's a difficult question to answer, because we'll be naive to think that this was an educational decision only. I think it was about more than education. It was about more than just the need for people to go back to school to complete the curriculum. I think there were other factors that contributed towards the decision, and the economy being one of them. And the minister makes mention of the idea that schools are not just institutes of curriculum coverage and learning, but they're also social institute, people that serve the community. And by that, I gather that she's saying, it's also a safe place for your children to be during the day. So if I was, if you'd ask me on a personal level, I would say to you that our preoccupation with trying to normalize things and trying to get things to a point that they are the way they used to be, I think that is a major hindrance in terms of our progress, because we're trying to return to a normality that no longer exists. So I think so many resources and energy has gone into trying to get us to a point where we were before COVID-19 that could have been spent elsewhere, that could have been used to develop a different system for us, And what that system is now, that system looks, I'm not entirely sure, but there's got to be some technology involved in that. The mere fact that we are able to have this discussion and it's a meaningful discussion, the mere fact that we were able to have this discussion, demonstrates the power of technology. So I read a statistic the other day that the department spends, almost 150 million rand on textbooks a year, So if you break that into how many, and that's just a simple way of putting it, it's obviously more complex than this.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to make a point, how many devices could you have purchased with that, and said to schools or to whoever, that this is an opportunity for us to migrate to that sort of platform. And once again, I just need to read. It's not as simple as just buying a tablet and saying to a kid, now you're saddled for learning. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that, there's so many resources that we have used in trying to force things to get back to the way they were, that we could have used elsewhere, that we could used in a different way to forge a new way forward, because I do think that there needs to be an evolution in education in terms of how we do and what we do it, and I think it's becoming a bit stale.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm hoping you're not going to mind. I just want to take one question. Well, at this stage, welcome to everybody who's since joined us. I see there's over 100 listeners or viewers currently.
I must charge you a rate for this.
No, that is because you are on. So anyways, good evening, colleagues. And I mean, I see Theola Phillips, Eugenia, Chandre, all of these people I've interviewed are beautiful and very, very fantastic people. Dawn Peterson, principal of Golden Grove. Good evening to you, Mrs. Peterson. Wow, Denzel Smith, life coach, and many others. Now, Theola picked up a question, and I saw it earlier, and I just, Mr. Engel, it's been a few weeks since senior phase has started. How do you keep your senior phase educators' spirit up? So, how do you keep them motivated?
There's no way. There is no chance. Yeah. You see Lee, the idea that we need to keep people motivated and spirited means that we never have to face hardship. So the senior phase educators are not motivated at this stage. My senior phase educators are not motivated, but they are working hard. So I salute them, because despite their fears and their anxiety, they are forging, and they're saying it's not nice and it's not easy and it's not pleasant, but we believe in what we're doing and therefore we are going to find a way. So I don't think that you can just say, okay, I'm going to get you motivated to a point where you're going to look beyond the situation that you are in and everything is going to be okay. But what I do think helps, is having conversations with people. Peter Block, he says that the delivery vehicle of my expertise is my humanity.
Sure.
And basically what he's saying is that, I can know what I know, I can be an expert in whatever it is that I do, but if I lose the human touch, and if I can't connect with you on that level, then my message is not going to get across. So I do make a point of checking in with the grade 7 teachers. I do make a point of asking them how they are doing. I do invite them into my room and say, come and have a conversation with me. Because I don't think, I'd be delusional to think that I could motivate them at this stage to say, well done, and carry on and inspire people and change lives. I think I'd be delusional to say that. What I can do to them is to say, look, you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
So whatever support you need, I'm going to try and get it for you, because we're going to get out of this in whichever way possible. But it's not necessarily going to be pleasant. It's not going to be easy, but we're going to try. We're going to try and make the best of the situation that we are in.
Absolutely. Now, whilst we're on the grade 7s, now the learners, Prof. Jansen spoke about the pedagogical reality. This term seems to be stuck with me for the last while. What is the reality like in the grade 7 classrooms currently compared to week 1? Are the learners somehow, warming up to the new normal, or are we still experiencing some very reluctant in terms of engaging? How are we looking there with the learner sphere?
Look, there is no normal, so there is no new normal as well. We don't know what normal looked like. We are where we are. And this fascination with trying to make things normal is going to be our downfall. Normal wasn't so nice in the first place. I got to be honest with you. Normal was challenging for us, not just in education, but in many things that we did in South Africa. We look at gender-based violence, that wasn't so nice in any case. But to get back to your question, yeah. So how much learning actually happens at school is a relative question, because I'm not sure how much learning is happening. I think learners are at school because somewhere between what we've been doing at school and the message that they've been receiving from their parents, they believe that this is the right place for them to be. What is happening in reality is perhaps window dressing at this stage, if I got to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So if you ask me the question, how different are the grade 7s now than what they were in grade 1? In week 1. They're a little bit better in terms of maybe they've gotten used to the routine that we have at school.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they're ready or better prepared for what is actually happening, because getting back to my point, our school is a very protected one, so we have the ability to make them feel really sheltered, But Lee, I also just want to say that, funnily enough, the grade 6s have adapted better than the grade 7s. So I need to salute the grade 7s in that they were, and I'm going to be honest with you, they were the guinea pigs. They were the 2 white doves that were sent out by Noah to say, go, let's see if there's land somewhere and bring a leaf back.
Yeah.
And we've used the experience and the knowledge we've gained from having them back to better adjust our grade 6s. And my grade 6 teachers have done a wonderful job of connecting with their learners in the time that we've been at school. They've contacted every single learner and every single parent, not successfully, but they've gotten hold of a lot of them and reintegrated them into the process, from school and from home where they are, so that when they did return this week, yesterday and the day before yesterday and today, they seem to have adjusted better than the grade 7s. The other thing that I also need to mention is that our teachers, especially the grade 7 teachers, only really knew their learners for a term. So that reality that you're talking about, that pedagogy, there's a lot to be said between the relationship between the teacher and the learner. And one term is not enough for a teacher to establish a relationship, considering all the things that happen at the start of the term.
Yeah.
So it was extremely difficult to expect our grade 7s especially to return after a storm like this and to imagine, to think that things are going to be okay.
Yeah.
But once again, I need to salute the grade 7s for their bravery that they've shown.
Now, I want to ask you just to keep your responses short with the next 3 questions. First one, Learners back at school, not working. How do you respond to that?
Not learning.
Okay. I'm going to quote a question that was posed by Chandra Minar earlier. En sy vra, is daar skole wat dinge maak werk? Sekers voel dat ons in die public skole moun verniet en dat ons lui is om te gaan werk. Hoe reageer jy hierop?
Moet ek in Afrikaans antwoord?
Jy is meer as wat Chandra is van dit dood. Nee, sy hou skool by Heks van hy sekondêr, maar sy is van Ceres, maar ek dink sy is beide tale magtig, maar ek bedoel Afrikaans of Engels is jou keuse.
Okay. So are there schools that are getting it right? No. No, we don't know what right is. Are there schools that are trying? Yes. Are there schools that are following the guidelines? Yes. Are the guidelines practical? No. Not all of them. Are there lazy teachers? Yes. We've been naive to think that we're all noble and hardworking in this profession. There are lazy teachers who are perhaps exploiting the situation.
Yeah.
There are millions, and I should say millions, thousands and thousands of hardworking teachers that are suffering, you know. I mean, if there were no lazy teachers, there would be no need for people like you, Lee, to go and defend them. So there are lazy teachers who are exploiting the situation. And what was the other part of the question? The last part?
Ons in public skole moun verniet, ek weet nie of daai gecover het nie.
Okay, moun verniet. Are people, you can never say that, you must always acknowledge people's feelings and people's emotions, Somewhere between your reality and my reality is the truth. But you cannot deny my emotions and how I feel about a situation at that point in time, because for me in that moment, the feeling that I'm feeling might be misplaced, but it's real, because that's the way I feel. So are people protesting and are they moaning in vain? No, they are not. One of my criticisms here is that we haven't created a platform for people to discuss things, so teachers do feel that these things have been thrown upon them. They have not been invited to the table to be part of this discussion. So are people complaining in vain? No, I don't think so.
No. And I mean that you're touching on a very interesting point, and that is the very reason why this platform was created, or one of the reasons at least, is to initiate dialogue, to educate us, to empower us, and in turn to excel. And look, I mean, a lot of teachers their voices get lost in the masses, and so this is but one attempt to get the views of the masses. We won't be able to reach every single one, but I think it's a sincere attempt. I must say so myself. All right, now, do you feel that you had to choose between life and education at some point, or was the choice made for you? With this whole...
No, I think I've always had a choice. Yeah. You see, the difficulty is, and I've expressed this to some of my colleagues, is that, when you don't get the answer that you want, you feel that you don't have a choice. But the fact is, how convicted are you to make the decision and live with the consequences of it, So you had Professor Jansen on your show a few weeks ago, and he said that, the youth of 76 and the youth of 2020, they need to have a conversation. And the point that he made, and maybe it is a misinterpretation of it, but the point that he made was that the youth of 76 made sacrifices, and they repeated the year, whichever year it was, but they made that sacrifice and they made that decision. I think lots of us in this point in time, we don't want to make the decision because we don't want to live with the consequence. So we feel powerless, But the reality is, I have a family member, for example, who's just said that he's not going to send his daughter back to school, and she needs to repeat the year. Now, I admire that sort of courage of conviction, because you are saying that, I'm not going to be forced into a situation that I'm not comfortable. We all don't have the luxury to walk away from situations because we got people who depend on us. I know of teachers who said that I don't like this. I'm not going to be forced in the corner, and I'm going to resign. I'm going to walk away, and that is how convicted I am. So I admire that. We don't all have the luxury of doing that. Back to your question, I don't feel that I will be ever placed in a situation that I need to choose between my life and education. If it gets to that point, you have the option of saying, no, I don't want to do this. The reality is that it's not always so nice after that, because you're going to have to struggle with a lot of things. But you have the option of saying no, of saying, look, I don't want to be part of this. I'm not going to be forced into something that I'm not comfortable doing.
Sure.
If you understand the point that I'm trying to make.
I get you wholeheartedly, and I wish we had more time at our disposal because unfortunately we've run out of time. Now I'm going to combine two questions and
Sure.
feel free to give it your best shot. One, what are some of the lessons that this pandemic has taught you as a teacher, as a principal, as a human being even? Right? That's the first part of the question. The second one is just give us a message of hope to our teachers and our managers and our education sector workers at this time.
Yeah. So some of the lessons that I learned from this is that there's such a word as a comorbidity. Before this, it's not a word that I would have used in any sentence. So now I know what a comorbidity is, but that's just on a lighter note, Yeah. But some of the lessons that I've learned is that a lot of teachers are resourceful, they're innovative, and they are hardworking. I've learned that in South Africa, we don't have enough skills. We are not able to solve problems. So our way of solving this is to try to get it back to the way it was. It's a different sort of problem. You need a different sort of solution. So we don't teach that explicitly in our schools, and that's a challenge. A lot of people work from home and were not able to manage themselves. So that's a challenge. I've learned that learning takes time, and that you can't force people into 30-minute slots and say you learn what you need to learn. I've also learned that South Africans generally respond when there's a crisis. So when we are back into a corner, we are at our best. Sometimes hope that we could just take a step forward instead of waiting for crisis to happen. We could be a little bit more proactive and trying to think, ahead of our time. But I also learned that there's a lot of hardworking people out there who give endlessly of their time and their resources. So there are people there who are really trying to make a difference. What I've learned about myself is that I still have a lot to learn in this game. The last part of your question was hope. What message of hope do we have for our teachers out? So Professor Jansen said on occasion that as leaders, we are dealers in hope. So I don't want to patronize teachers and say to them things are going to get better. I don't want to say to them that it will be okay, that there's going to be a rainbow after the storm. I don't have message of hope for them in that there's no promises of a better tomorrow. What I want to say to them is, whatever it is that you're doing right here and right now, that is what you need to do to your very, very best ability. And someone along the line is going to appreciate this, so wherever you are, make a difference. And whatever the way that is, do it with dignity. Do it in such a way that when you walk away from it, people feel that they're still humans and that they haven't been degraded. So just keep on working as hard as you possibly can and make the difference that you are making. Somewhere along the line, 20 years from now, someone is going to come to you and say, sir, ma'am, in that moment, if it wasn't for you. So keep on doing what you are doing. We appreciate all the teachers in South Africa.
Sure. I'm reminded about the words of, I don't know if you remember, we for those who don't know, you and I studied together. And I think it was in
I studied.
And it was, people change. And it was in our second year, I think, of education that Dr. Brian Bowers, he made a very, very
Yeah.
he made a very interesting comment on an essay. I think we had to, and the title, yeah, I can't get to it now, but the comment that he made was, are you an active participant in the process of learning, or are you merely a passenger on the bus called education? And so, you know, this is probably one of the reasons why I've always admired your insights, because even back then you were able to inspire, you were able to empower, knowingly and unknowingly, because your heart is at the right place. At the right place, you've got a passion for what you do, and that is evident. I mean, some things cannot be faked, some things cannot be fabricated. And so, Mr. Engel, allow me, on behalf of the Western Cape Teachers Forum, to extend my thanks and my appreciation for the role that you've played in education, for the role that you've played in the hearts and the minds of your colleagues, and thank you for sharing your heart with us. I mean, this is certainly not an easy time, even as principals, to come on public forums and express their views, for obvious reasons. I mean, and we're not going to go into that, but my sincere thanks for this. And I am certain that many of us can walk away from this conversation enriched. Again, I always premise the conversation by saying, look, we're not here to solve problems. Yes, we get a conversation going. And whatever you can download from this, hold on to that and excel, empower, And so thank you. And I wish you nothing but the very best as you impact the lives meaningfully with those that you engage. I keep on saying that, but you know that I mean that, because we've known each other for years. And so my respect and my thanks to you this evening.
Lee, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for that high praise. Thank you very much. We do need to get our ego stroked every now and again. So thank you very much for that. But thank you for the work that you're doing. In one of my answers to one of your questions was that we don't invite enough people to the table to have the conversation, and therefore the decisions that we make are all very homogeneous. It's a one-sided view, and I made the point earlier as well. That you look at it from this side and it's true for you, and I look at it from this side and it's true for you, but in between somewhere is the truth. So the more people you invite to the conversation, the greater the perspective, So thank you for the work that you're doing, and may it continue. So thank you very much for the invitation. And I hope that there were a few viewers out there who could resonate with what I had to say this evening. So thank you very much, Lee.
Well, Anthea Johnson, just before you go, mentions the following: appreciated your honesty, Mr. Engel. Thank you and good luck for the rest of the year. And then Colleen McBrien? She says, we need more of Mr. Engels in the world. Keep it up. So, need I say more? Mr. Engel, on that note, good night and have a blessed evening.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.